Today is episode 93, and we're going to continue our discussion from last week about Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and then we're going to jump into something from Scripture about when Israel was transitioning from the judges to having a king. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Destry thinks it's going to be a lot of fun.
I do.
Chris, I think we have a camera on him today, but it's going to be episode 93. Exciting, a little bit terrifying.
Is the terrifying part having a camera on Chris?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Because people, for the first time, will be able to see. My goodness.
Some things are just better left unseen.
You know.
But he's here. Chris, put the camera on you real quick and say hi to everybody.
Good morning, everyone. Now there's somebody behind the camera. See, I told y'all didn't want to see this.
People watching on YouTube just went, turn it off, turn it off.
Anyway.
The humanity.
Okay, so here we go. We are doing part...
Good to see you, Chris.
We're doing part 2 of Sun Tzu. But before we do that...
Part 2, Sun Tzu.
Part 2 Sun Tzu. What I've been listening to this week is Bob Dylan, Nashville Skyline, and I want to do a deep dive on Bob Dylan. I know I've done Neil Young. Don't think I've done Bob Dylan before.
Nope. We've mentioned him in passing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
The reason that I find this album / CD intriguing is because how young he is. If you can see that, just pull up anything from Nashville Skyline, Bob Dylan. He's early 20s or late teens. He doesn't look like the same guy. He doesn't sound like the same guy, but it is a fantastic album. Lay Lady Lay is on this, which is one of his biggest hits. Johnny Cash does a duet with him, and it's a good mixture of folk, rock, country, little jazzy too. And it really shows his chops on the guitar, and it's mostly acoustic. It's just a really good CD. Put out in 1969. I was 4 years old. It was redone in 2003 by Sony, and it sounds really good. The remake sounds really good. So anyway, he's an interesting character. Bob Dylan is very interesting. He wrote every song on this CD, and he writes. He's a very prolific writer. He's just one of those guys that, like Neil Young, some people can't sit and just listen to him sing because he's got kind of an off voice. You know, if he went on America's Got Talent or something like that, he wouldn't make it, through the first
right
through the first contest. But he's so unique. He's such an outlier that he was one of the trendsetters, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and everybody knows who Bob Dylan is. I think everybody's heard of Bob Dylan. So anyway, we'll do
He's 84.
84 years old.
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
His voice always reminded me of, those cars, like every now and then you'll encounter one of these kind of like souped up cars or whatever, where they're at the stoplight and the guy keeps like feathering the gas pedal, like woon 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 woon. That's what Bob Dylan's voice reminds me of.
He does that. Knowing that, and you listen to this in 1969, you catch a little bit of that.
Yeah.
It seems to me like he really laid into that after a while.
Oh yeah, he definitely yeah.
But
the later Bob Dylan was more like that. Yeah.
Like Van Morrison, whom I love, I can't understand half the words he's saying, but I love listening to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I love listening to him, but I'm like, great deal. I'll make up my own words when listening to him. But this is not like that. Nashville Skyline, it's clear, it's great. You can hear his poetry. It's beautiful. It really is. And I just got it last week from Amazon, so
But you've always admitted you've made up your own words to most every song.
Even if it's clear as day, I still have chronic lyricosis. You know, I lean into my chronic lyricosis, Chris, for sure. Anyway,
I annoy my wife and daughter with that because, like, I rarely ever remember the true lyrics to a song, but I'll remember the tune. I'll be like humming along or whatever, singing or whatever, and I'll just like make stuff up as I go through it. Makes them so mad.
I guess it's a man thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do it as well. Okay, let's talk about Sun Tzu. Last week, real quick, I'm just going to go over the 5 highlights or the 5 points of his book, The Art of War, that we already went over. Number 1 was knowing the terrain and the conditions. Number 2 is know your opponent or know your enemy. Number 3 is exploit timing, attack when they are unprepared. Number 4 was conserve strength. He who knows when to fight and when not to fight will be victorious. Number 5, which we ended on, is unity of the team, move as one. All right. So number 6, deception. Appear weak when you are strong, strong when you are weak. Now, last week, I used the example of Lance. I can't remember which one I used this on, but I used the example of whenever Lance acted like he was struggling, but he wasn't. He put a grimace on his face whenever his competition looked back at him. Jan Ulrich looked back at him, and Lance was doing this and acting like he was hurt, and he wasn't. And I don't remember which one that was. I used that for, but it is also appropriate here.
Yeah.
Just appear to be strong when you are not, and appear to be weak when you are not. It's harder to appear strong when you're not on a bicycle than it is to appear weak when you're not on a bicycle, because if you're suffering, sometimes those signs are subconscious. You're bent over your handlebars. You're profusely sweating more than you should be. There's a look on your face. So it's hard to go from this to this than it is from this to this.
Yeah.
One of the things George Hincapie taught me just by doing what he did was no matter how he felt, it didn't matter. Most of the time, his face was very flat. Just
Poker face.
poker face. He had a poker face. He
Poker
was
face.
so good at it. And I did my best to emulate that. That way, nobody knew one way or another, right? If I was riding okay, nobody knew one way or another. And it also kind of talked the rest of my body. I talked myself into thinking that it talked the rest of my body into relaxing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
2 things I did was relax my face and relax my shoulders. Because what I would tend to do is do this. That's not doing anything for anybody. I'm not going any faster by doing this. So I relax my shoulders and just let my waist down do the job. And there's times where my lower body was doing very well and my upper body was cramping because I was cramping up too much or squinting up too much up top. Anyway, so that's let's see, erotomite sandbag is what it's called, right? If you're feeling really good, or a general how would you guys be in the history guys? How would a general sandbag so his enemy would look like they're weak? How would they do that?
How would a general appear?
Weak whenever they're actually strong.
Oh,
That's kind of easy to do in a respect. If you're being observed, you would watch, like you pull less troops on the front, maybe. Have your lines look thinner. You're trying to get the enemy to feign in and attack. I mean, one of the famous ones of that would be Shaka Zulu, from the Zulu king. He would have the horns of the bull, and he would, if somebody would strike the head of the bull, he would feign it back, thereby allowing the horns to collapse around them. But he appeared retreat. That's done a lot in war, where you actually allow your enemy to hit you, you retreat, like in a disarray, all because of the time you've got something on the sides ready to sweep
Gotcha.
in.
Josh was talking about that last week also from the Bible.
Yeah.
Right.
So two battles from the Bible that kind of illustrate this. Back in the book of Judges, there's a really popular account or well-known account of Gideon, where he's trying to collect a bunch of people to go to war. And I forget how many he started with, like maybe 10,000 or something like that. And God was like, no, that's way too much. And so he told Gideon, tell everyone, if you're afraid, go ahead and go home. And so thousands of people went home. And the people that were left, Gideon's kind of stressing out. He's like, it's not a lot of people, but all right, we still got some. And God's like, nah, it's still way too much. So do this. Go to the brook and tell everyone to get a drink. And the ones that just dive in, dunk their face in the water and just start sucking it in, tell them to go home. But the ones that kneel down and, lap it, bring it to their mouth with their hand, keep them. And there's only a couple hundred left. And people love to make sermons about that. Like, it's because they were watching around.
Yeah.
No, it's because it was the fewest number. This is how God, the fewer there are of people, the greater glory God gets. But there's only a couple hundred left. And so the strategy, as Gideon is praying about this, God says, here's what you do. Give everyone a lamp and a clay pot. Put the lamp in the clay pot. And at night, you go and surround the camp. Everyone breaks the clay pot. The lights turn on, and I'll do everything for you. I'll take care of the rest. And so people love to talk about that and sort of relate it to a Sun Tzu type strategy. They're like, well, the reasons that the enemies freaked out is because the practice of the time was if you had 500 people, they were led by one lamp, and they only had a couple hundred people, and everybody had a lamp. So it made the enemies think that they were strong when they're actually weak. That's not true either. God was doing something supernatural there, but it's an illustration of that kind of concept, right?
Gotcha. Right.
But that's strong when you're weak. The other one is weak when you're strong. We talked about this last week with Ai. When Joshua and the Israelites went to attack Ai, they split up, and the ones that attacked from the front acted scared. And when Ai came out, like they did in the previous battle with Israel, they ran after Israel, and it was like, oh no, we're scared again. And they turned around and ran. And so Ai pursued them. Well, back behind the city, hiding behind the next mountain, was the rest of the Israelites. They came in behind and just burnt the city to the ground and conquered Ai. That's appearing weak when you're actually strong.
That's right. Very good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very good. All right. Number. Yes.
What I find interesting is people employ that strategy without knowing it on a personality level, because people like to exude, guys especially, we love to exude bravado when there's really nothing behind it.
It's true. It's very true.
One of the funny things, whenever I'm in like a group of other people, like, meeting with sometimes at local university, we have like a round table where they bring in people from the working world in construction, engineering, all this stuff. And we always start the meeting by, let's go around and introduce everybody. And it's always funny to me because everybody introduces themselves by their accomplishments. Like, I'm so-and-so, and I work for this company, and I've been in charge of, 78 cajillion dollars in construction projects, and, I've all this stuff. And the next guy comes up, well, I'm so-and-so, and I'm from this business, and, I've done all these great things, and I'm kind of a little bit greater than this guy. But I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to keep, and everybody does that. And so I always think it's funny when it gets to me, like, I'm Josh. I'm an engineer. All right.
Next. Who's this guy?
It's just kind of like a funny little break in that trend.
Well, in martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically, I was always taught it's the quiet ones you got to watch for. And we were always taught to be really quiet, but have a pose.
Yeah.
So every time we're watching a video, like in Hollow Point Gun Club, of some robbery or something that a camera caught on film. It's always the guys they're not the guys that are posturing up and going, It's the guys just standing there like this looking for the place. And a lot of times they're turned sideways and they're just kind of maybe look like they have their head down or something. And then whenever they act, they move and they don't stop until somebody's subdued. That's how I was taught to fight. And that's the way that I see number 6 here as appear weak whenever you're strong. Just chill.
Yeah.
You don't
I
have
like
to
to
say
play
what
my
you're going to
cards
do.
close to my chest.
What's that?
I like to play my cards close to my chest.
That's right. That's right. All right. Let's do number 7. Control the pace. Talked about this a little bit last week. Every race I've ever won, every race my team has ever, the team I've been on has ever won, has controlled the pace. What does that mean? First of all, we raced from the front. Team got up front. 100 people, Subaru, Jeep, we're all up front. Every one of us up front. We get up there, we set the pace. If we're going to do 100 miles, we'll set the pace at 25 or 26 to begin with. Everybody gets lined up. Everybody's thinking, man, we got 100 miles to go. Those guys got 8 guys up there. How are we gonna do this? A lot of people will fall off before they're even tired because they want to conserve to get to the end. Well, whenever we're putting down energy, and then we rest, everybody else, the hope is everybody else has to rest a little bit too. And then we pick up the energy again. We're controlling the pace, right? We can rest when we want to rest. We put the energy down when we want to put the energy down. Now, there's also other teams that are doing the same thing. So we rest, and then they pick up the energy, right? So it's a game. But it's easy. I've won a race. I've done well in races by just kind of fitting in, using other teams. If I'm by myself, I just use other teams. But you really have to know what you're doing whenever that happens.
How do those races start? Are you just all in a big crowd? You all start at once?
Yep.
And then you just all organize?
Yep.
Are all the teams grouped together within that crowd, or is everyone like even?
Ideally, you're all together.
Dispersed? Okay.
Ideally, you're all together. If you have a team, not everybody has a team, right? There's individuals that race. I've raced many races as an individual. It's almost easier to race as an individual in some ways. If you know how to read a race, it's almost easier. It's easier to finish well, not necessarily win, but finish in the top 5, finish in the top 6, something like that. Anyway, so racing from the front is what I call that. Sun Tzu calls it command the momentum. All right, number 8.
Well, so Bruce Lee, he invented his own fighting style, Jeet Kune Do. And that was one of the things that he stressed in his fighting style. If you ever watch videos of him, when he starts, like when he faces off against someone, he starts that characteristic little bounce where he's kind of like bouncing back and forth, and he'll flick his foot up or whatever. He's like controlling the rhythm of that fight.
He's controlling it. I've been watching boxing lately, and I watched Muhammad Ali box the other day. This was, I think, one of his last fights. He was 35 years old. And I was so looking forward to this, watching Muhammad Ali box, because I haven't seen him box in a long time. I'll tell you what, it was one of the most boring matches I've ever seen. It really was.
Yeah.
Just because he was fighting a 27-year-old or a 25-year-old who was at the top of his game. Muhammad Ali's going out trying to win the heavyweight belt, and then he was going to retire. Well, what Muhammad Ali would do is he would punch, and the guy would come in, and Muhammad would hold him. He did that every time, every time. Very, very hard to watch. But he ended up winning because he knew how to manipulate the score. There's a point. Hold him. Because if he was going to get into a boxing match with this guy, he was going to lose. He was going to lose. But he went. Back then, they would do 15 rounds. 15 rounds. That's a long time to fight. But he ended up winning. He did. But it was hard. He controlled.
That wasn't a knockout, was it?
No.
Yeah, it was a technical knockout. Yeah.
No, it wasn't at all. He was so fast. He was so fast. It was unbelievable how fast he was. And he didn't look like he was hitting that hard, but he controlled the pace. He did. He controlled the pace against a much stronger opponent. A much stronger opponent. You look at this guy, his opponent, and I can't remember what his opponent's name was, but he looked like a specimen. You know, he could be in GQ, tall. He had probably outweighed, I don't know if he outweighed him by a lot, but he on paper, he looks like he could have won. But Muhammad, you know, how many fights did Muhammad have where he had to outsmart the other guys? Anyway, sometimes you have to do that, outsmart the stronger people. I'm sure there's a lot of examples in war that has happened, right? Being smarter, having a lot less people, but be smarter.
Who was the boxer that did the rope-a-dope?
I don't know.
It was Muhammad Ali.
That was Muhammad Ali.
I think it was.
Yeah, he would like let himself get pinned on the ropes, and he would just have his arms up like this, and the guy would just be wailing on him. He's like, and he would just sit there and take it, and the other guy would just expend so much energy and just get wore the plum out. And then as soon as he was done, Muhammad Ali was like, "All right, my turn." Bam, bam, and he would win. Yeah, and he was called the rope-a-dope.
I guess if it was Muhammad, it was him. What was the guy from Pensacola?
Roy Jones Jr.
Roy Jones Jr. I watched him fight the other day. Have you ever seen him fight? Chris, you ever seen him fight?
I actually have met him 2 or 3 times. I did some work for him years ago. Yeah.
But did you see any of his fights on TV or anything?
Oh yeah, a couple. Yeah.
Man, I knew he was good. But I mean, I've watched boxing all week from the 70s, 80s, 90s. I don't know if anybody could beat. I don't know if Muhammad Ali could have beat this guy. He was so fast, and he'd fight like this. His fists were kind of down, and they'd come up real quick, but he wouldn't even rear back. It'd go from here to there so quick and knock guys out, man. It was so much. He's fun to watch.
Yeah,
he was really, really fun to watch. And this was so old they were calling him a kid.
Okay.
The commentator said, "This kid's going to make something of himself." I was like, "Yeah, I think he is."
He was very small statued for, you know.
He got big though. He ended up gaining weight, and he looked really good whenever I saw him. Man, he didn't look much different. You know, he aged really well, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. Number 8, adaptability. Be formless like water. So this goes for cycling. It's easier to be formless like water whenever you're racing by yourself, because you can pick whoever you want to be near or draft off of. If you're a team, you pretty much stay together. You know what I mean? And you're looking for your teammates and all this. As an individual, you can float around, and just if you know how to read the air, the wind and draft and team and all this stuff, you can just kind of act like water. You know what I mean? The regular flow of a peloton is like this. If you're up front, if everybody moved naturally, it would be like this. People go up front, they peel off, they come back, they go up front again, they peel off. And if you did that with 100 people, you'd be surprised how far you could go and how much energy you would save. That's just the way it goes. But you've got to fight that to be a team and to an individual. Not everybody. It's just not natural flow is not going to happen. So you're consistently fighting that. Let's see. What does Sun say about it? Be formless like water, grasshopper. Be formless. Okay. Number 9, exploit divisions, strike divided forces. Sun Tzu counseled striking when the enemy is scattered. In cycling, that means you attack when a team is not a team. So if you see the leader isolated, if he or she is without their teammates around, and you know that person, it's a good time to attack with your team. So this person is, blown off the back, or he doesn't have any protection for other teammates. It's difficult to have somebody isolated like that as a team. The reason you're a leader is because you're really good at what you do. So but crashes can happen, crosswinds can happen. A lot of things can happen beyond your control, flats, things like that. So a leader can get isolated regularly. Okay, number 10, the last one, seize the decisive moments. Sun Tzu says victory comes from seizing opportunities. In war and racing, there are only a few true decisive moments. Really, the decisive moment in racing can happen anytime. Leaders isolated, that's a decisive moment. If you're able to if you're able to create a gap between this group and this group, the back group falls back exponentially because of the draft, right? There's been times in a race where I've been at the back of a group and it feels like I'm being pushed. You know what I mean? I'm coasting and it feels like I'm being pushed because of the way the wind was relative to where we were, the way people were behaving in the peloton. At the same time, if a group of people were in that same group but they got shelled off the back, they're going back quicker. Well, we're going forward. They're going back quicker than we're going forward. Does that make sense? They're getting off the draft. There's no way they're getting back on. So that's a decisive moment. In order to know when that is, you have to read the weather. You got to read the way people are acting. You got to read everything that's happening in a race. That's when it's really beneficial to have more than one person, to have a team for that. So, what are some decisive moments in some like warlike? What would you say would be a decisive moment?
Well, World War II is a good example of that, when we finally made the decision to go after Nagasaki and Hiroshima. I think, I've talked about this with other people in the past. Like, there was an ideological war happening, behind the scenes there, because you had Hitler with his idea of the master race and the Japanese with their ideas of the master race, and it took a lot for the leaders of the time to realize just how deeply entrenched different sides were in their ideology and what it was going to take to overcome that. And that's why we made the decision to drop the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, there's a lot of debate that's happened since then about was it right or was it wrong, whatever. But at the time, the decision was like, what's the precise moment, and what's the strategic location to do this, to end a war that could potentially keep going on longer and longer and affect more human lives and all that stuff. And so Sun Tzu, he wrote Art of War. There's another really famous military leader named Clausewitz. I think he was Prussian, right? Prussian. Yeah. And he wrote on war. So Sun Tzu is kind of like the Proverbs of war. There's a lot of like single line statements. Clausewitz, he wrote on war, which is kind of like a philosophical treatise on war. Okay. And one of the things that he said was like, I forget if he used the term just war or if he used the term like merciful war or something like that. But basically, the best way to do it is to go hard and go fast so it's over the quickest. And it might have to be like super violent, but if you just get it over with, that's how you can minimize, the residual damage and stuff. And that was kind of the philosophy that was going on there in World War II.
Gotcha.
When also breaks the will of your opponent. If you're hard, violent, and you crush them, and they people in general, no matter what you are, at some point you break, and you're like, this is not worth it, and that's kind of where that comes in at. Right. Actually, I have an entire little battle that took place that covers every one of your points, and Sun Tzu was born 35 years before the Roman republic was founded. He was born in like 544 BC. But none of his works actually came into what we call Western civilization until like 1781, when a Jesuit priest translated these texts that weren't really supposed to be let out. So as far as Western culture goes, he's relatively new,
Right.
but his works have been around. The principles that Sun Tzu wrote down were used by many people way before they knew about him. And what's funny is when you start thinking about history, I studied mostly medieval history. What we know is France and Germany and England and Italy. They're relatively modern countries, especially Italy and Germany are actually not as old as the U.S., even though they've been around technically longer. But what was known as France was actually the Franks, then it became the Normans, then it went. I have this one because I was kind of going over all of it here. In 732, in Tours, France, a leader named Charles Martel, basically assembled a very small army because the Muslim Moors were coming up out of Spain and attacking there. He chose a hillside, taking the terrain, filled with trees, because the Moorish cavalry was if you get in the open field, they had you. So he got into the trees. That broke the use of the cavalry. They couldn't charge between the trees and hit. After many attempted smashes on this whole thing, their leader, somehow a rumor started that the actual the Muslim camp was being attacked. So their troops broke, ran back thinking that all their goodies they'd stole were being stolen. The leader tried to rally. In the process, he got killed, causing even more. And that's when this guy Martel came down out of the hills onto the plains and struck them, breaking the rest of the army. And all this took place in 732 AD. So he used the ground, he used seizing opportunity, he used, one of the other problems, when all that cavalry kept slamming into his shield wall line, where they killed the horses, the men, that made it even harder for the cavalry to charge. And so every time that they got killed, they basically kept filling up the field with their own debris. And then finally he comes down, he wipes them out, drove them from the field. But he maintained order, and he did not allow his way fewer troops to pursue them, because in the pursuit, then they could have gotten ambushed again. So he held the ground. And what's funny is that was the last time that a major Muslim incursion occurred into Western Europe. Eastern Europe was different, but Western Europe, that was the last time, because they just kept coming up against people who could hold them.
Well, I think it's interesting because there has been a Muslim incursion since, but it hasn't been on the battlefield.
Right.
Because Europe is being taken over by Islamic
Forces.
Excuse me.
forces right now. But instead of doing it on the battlefield, they just move in. They have a ton of kids.
Yeah.
And they just build the population to where eventually there's a majority, and it's taken over without battle.
It's working.
It's where it's starting to happen here in America as well.
All right, guys. Well, that was number 10, seizing the decisive moment, and victories come from seizing opportunities. And I'll end with this in the racing comparison. Whenever y'all were talking about, Chris, you were saying that you can break people. After a while, you're going to break. And it's the same thing in cycling, in that if you've got a peloton of people, all race, people are going to try to go off the front, is what it's called. They're going to put down more energy for a certain period of time, knowing they're not going to be able to put down that energy forever for the whole race. But if you get off the front far enough, you break the will of the peloton. You go, man, we're never going to be able to. He's on a special day. We're never going to be. Especially if you get out of sight. If you get out of sight and the teams don't have radios and things like that, this is especially true in mountain biking. Whenever I would pass somebody in mountain biking, I would put on a big surge to get out of sight so they couldn't see me. I could be a mile ahead of them, or I could be just around the corner. They don't know. And whenever a person is in physical pain, everything in their body is saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. All it takes is just a little bit of talking to go, all right, I'm just going to relax and I'm not going to worry about him. You know what I mean? So you get out of sight, you get out of mind, and you can run your race. You don't have to put down that power the whole time. I had a good example, and then I'll stop. This guy was racing for the state championship in, I think it was 06 or might have been 05. We were back-to-back. It was a race of eight races, and he would be ahead one week, and I'd be ahead one week. It was always 1 point. Anyway, it was always 1 point. And this one race, we were racing in somewhere South Florida, and it was in a rock quarry again, and there'd be open spaces from one technical section to another, about 3 or 4 technical sections, about open space field from one to another. And he was good technically. It was just as good. We were really compatible technically. So first lap, we went in, and he was on my wheel. I was up front, and he was on my wheel. And I was trying to break him in the technical parts by taking some chances, but not a lot. And we come out in between sections. So we did the first technical section, come out to go to the bridge to the other, and I stand up, and I put on a big surge. And I sit back. I look back, and he's there. Stand up, put on another big surge. I look back, he's still there. And I sit down, he starts whistling. Says, man, Destry, you are strong. Those are real, with that tone of voice, right? Man, those are really big exertions. Are you going to be able to make it the whole race? I'm like, man, this guy's a jerk. This guy is playing with me. And the last thing he said was, man, I really like that last one you put together. That was a strong. I looked back and I said, if you like that one, you're going to love this one. And I stood up and I just wailed it, man. Next time I saw him was me going to the number 1 box, and he was in the number 2 box on the award ceremony.
So he was trying to break you.
He was trying to break me.
And that just like hardened you.
It sure did. Now, it could have broke me because 2 strong attacks, and he was right on my wheel. But I thought it was so funny that he just started whistling. I don't know what it was. I look back and he's sitting there. I thought, man, that's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. But that last attack, and there's a picture of the photographer got a picture of me going into that second technical section almost in the air because I'm coming down this section so fast after putting on that big attack, and he's nowhere to be seen. So he was faking being strong whenever he was weak, and I thought it was a decisive moment, and he just ticked me off.
Yeah,
he thought I was going to start, be weak. But anyway, that was fun. We ended up being friends. It was fun. That's all I got. Sun Tzu, man, what a great book that was. That was a really good book. And I want to ask Chris a question, and then ask you a question, if that's okay. I told Donna that you gave me this book. And she said, why did he give you that book? I've never asked you that. Why did you go out of the blue? Why did you give me that? Why did you give me that book to read? Which I appreciate you doing. I really do. Or do you want to tell me that off air?
No. It's not so much off air.
Excuse me.
We both have different opinions on. So we have a lot of similar opinions. We have differing opinions on other factors, and understanding. We are in a weird political environment.
Yeah.
And understanding basically some of the concepts that hopefully don't come into play, but may come into play, I thought would be a good thing for you.
Gotcha. Understood.
And in that respect.
Understood.
You know, I don't operate. Y'all operate in different. I operate in the yellow at all times. That's just my personality. My yellow is your green, and I stay.
I'm colorblind. Sure, I'm in all those.
Yeah, you're all those colors.
His gray is his gray.
Yeah, he's all gray. So, but it's the point of I look at it. I look at things in a much more militaristic stand than you do.
Gotcha.
And that was trying to get you to understand how I think in some respects.
Understood.
Not in a bad way.
Yeah, I
it's
understand.
just,
It seems to me to be a cornerstone book of something. You know what I mean? Just knowing that the applications there are very valuable. Even
Chris
in
is always
conversation.
at war.
He's always at war with somebody.
I am.
Himself.
I mean that is a true statement. Whether it be my wife, or, I'm having to battle her for for the control of the Christmas season.
When it starts, I gotcha. Well, I appreciate it, Chris. I do. I appreciate it. I that's the best book that I've read in a long time. And like I talked about last week, I love going into something not knowing what it is and being surprised that I like it. You know what I mean? Because it was easier to listen to it than it was to read it.
Oh yeah.
And I was able to do that without any. I didn't have to force myself to do it. So appreciate that very much.
No problem. You're welcome.
And I wanted to ask Josh. Right now we're going through this is 2025. We're going through a government shutdown.
Oh yeah.
And my wife has been furloughed, which means the government said, okay, we're not going to work until both sides can come to the table and make an agreement, right? And you had a good take on that, I think, before we started recording last week. And I was every time I see Donna after we record, she said, "What did y'all talk about?" So, and one of the things was I couldn't remember if we did it before or air or on air.
Yeah, it was before we aired.
Before air.
In the hour and a half that we chit chat
That's
before
right.
we get around to recording.
That's right. So, what is your take on the government or a government shutdown, or this one specifically?
Well, when your wife gets furloughed and she eventually comes back, she gets back pay for that,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
She's not a contractor. She is a government employee, federal government employee.
Okay. No, and what we were talking about, so I kind of have like this tainted view of these things, and it might be true, it might not. It's just what kind of my opinion is that these are often used as like political tools. And so if I'm understanding this correctly, each year, both sides come together and they agree on a budget to appropriate money for different parts of the government,
Right.
funding, right? Like, okay, how much does your department need this year? Okay, cool. How much does yours? All right, where are you going to get this money from? Okay, cool. Let's agree on this budget, what the goals are for this budget, and move forward, and both sides have to vote on it. When they don't, then the stream of money stops flowing, and people have to take action to mitigate that. And what's usually infuriating about that to me as a business owner and as someone who's not in government is when a business encounters this type of thing, we, on the bottom side of society, right, we don't get to just say, we're going to pass this law and just start collecting more money, or we're just going to vote for this much money and that's what we get. We have to actually earn it. Government isn't really in that same position because it's just funded by taxes. So they just appropriate money. And, when we in the private sector start dealing with money issues, we have to figure out how to be more efficient. We have to lay people off. We have to make, financial decisions that might hurt people, whatever. Government doesn't really have to do that. They just like, to solve this problem, we just need to have more money. So we're just going to have more money. And and they get that money from me. And so so the other thing that is sort of infuriating about this, from the person's perspective who's working in government, I've never liked it. This happened during COVID when they locked everything down and they said only essential workers can be out, about doing their work, and all the non-essential people can't. And I hated that so much, because how dare someone in government tell me that I'm essential or not essential, and that whatever I choose to do for a living is not deemed worthy of allowing to continue on. And that's speaking as someone who my chosen profession was considered essential, because I do engineering. I'm involved in construction projects and all that stuff. That was considered essential. Regardless of that, even if all I'm doing is flipping burgers on, at McDonald's, whatever, I'm essential to someone. That paycheck is essential to something. Just to merely say, you're no longer needed, so you go home. You don't have the ability to earn a living wage. I have never liked that, and that happens to some degree in government too. Like, if you thought it was important enough to hire this person, why then is this person sacrificial in the system where the government gets shut down? Which means either one of two things: either the government can do without that, or the government can't, and it's just using this as a ploy to make the situation sound dire. And I don't like it when people are used as political tools for that, right? Especially when they come back, they just get all that back pay. And I'm not against the back pay. I like that. If you're hired, you need to get paid for it. But I don't like that being used as a political tool. That's the visible part. And I don't like when, so every department, if I understand this correctly, like, their shutdown procedures are guided by some type of document that gives the process that they're going to follow when things are shut down. So there's same thing. There's like there's the essential people and the non-essential people, and even though everything shuts down because of appropriations, the essential people still get to go to work and do their jobs and get paid and all this stuff, and the quote unquote non-essential ones don't. And so I've never liked being in a situation where someone else decides if I'm essential or not. Because regardless, I'm essential to me, and that paycheck is essential to my household. And so I guess to sum it all up, like, this all comes down to, both sides can't agree on where the appropriations come from. And so it results in this thing that becomes a very public spectacle. Oh, the government's shutting down. No, the government's not shutting down. All of the essential stuff is still there. They're still, doing defense. They're still doing, interactions with other countries, all that kind of stuff. It's just, and even non-essential things that are funded, I think, by multi-year, plans or whatever, they still go on. It's just whatever's the immediate result of this next budget, we're just putting on pause, so that when they come back, we can pay them back. And when a shutdown is expected, they even pay a lot of things in advance. So that makes me a little bit angry too, because if I were, one of these government employees, and I know that the shutdown is coming, and I know my department is trying to pay a bunch of stuff in advance so they can bridge that gap, why aren't I one of those? So to me, the whole thing is just, I don't know. I have a pessimistic outlook on the way bureaucracy runs anyway, at all levels.
It's more about optics, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think the shutdown is more about optics than it is about anything else.
You used a good example the other day about a man being sick. What was it?
Oh yeah, so like the a guy who donated a bunch of money to the hospital, and he's sick and he's in that hospital, is on life support or whatever, and the hospital's struggling financially, and so instead of reducing their power bills or all the types of money that's not necessarily necessary for it to run efficiently, instead of figuring out how to use their money more efficiently, they go to the guy on life support and said, man, we got to cut back money, and this life support's expensive, so we're going to have to turn that off unless we get some money, to try to to try to encourage the guy to donate more money to the hospital. And you often find that in, at least it appears to me that you always find that in these government shutdowns, because they always advertise like this, this important thing that's keeping people, like we can't pay our teachers, or we can't do this, or the things that have an emotional pull, are the things that tend to get highlighted in a government shutdown, so that people are like encouraged to either compromise or allow things that they wouldn't otherwise allow in the appropriations debates and stuff. Right. And so I always hate it when people are used as political tools. And I think
that's the bottom line.
That's
right
the bottom line.
Yep.
I hate it when that happens.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I hear what you're saying. And it
may be that I just misunderstand the whole process, but that's what it appears to me.
Okay. Is it also, I think it's true that the right is claiming that the left is trying to get some things redone that Trump has undone law-wise in this passage of
there's a bunch of that.
Right. There's a bunch of that.
Yeah.
So
it happens on both sides, though.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, this is a finger pointing at both sides simultaneously.
Yes. Right.
Because the Republicans are, and this is why I in cases like this, I often hesitate to even use the term right and left, because both sides are money grabbers.
Right. That's exact. But my point was that is happening now, just like every other. It's like any bill going through. There's stuff attached to it that may not be in the mainstream, but it's obvious that.
Well, yeah, any bill has like attachments to it that aren't necessarily related to that bill. It's like we're going to pass this bill. By the way, I want this passed too.
Yeah.
It doesn't really fit with anything else. So I'm just going to paper clip it to the side, and it gets passed when this bill does. And sometimes those things, those secondary and tertiary issues, get debated, and it stops the main thing from going through.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that, Josh. I appreciate it.
For more information, look up conjunction junction, how a bill becomes a law.
What's your function? Before Josh goes on his part, is there anything else you want to say about Sun Tzu or anything, Chris?
Actually, I'll add to what you just asked him.
Okay.
If you think about, if government speaking wise, if you're a non-essential employee, why do we need you? Why are we? I mean, why are we paying for something that would you would consider non-essential? So, government is left, right. Everybody has to remember the political parties, no matter where you're at, they're all attached to the same buzzard. Left wing, right wing, still attached to the same buzzard.
Yeah, right.
And unfortunately, in my case, if you say I'm here from the government, I'm here to help. You're going to get, I'm here from the government. That's the last thing you're going to say in my presence. So I'm not nice about it.
And it goes back to my point, too, because you said if you're not essential, why are you here? Like, you're obviously essential because you're not being let go. You're just being put on hold so that when money comes, we can bring you back and you're pay for all the time you're on hold. So it's almost kind of like a delayed vacation pay or something. And so, like, here again, a person is being used as a political tool.
Yeah.
Right.
And that infuriates me.
Gotcha. All right. Understood. Next week I may talk about Bob Dylan. We'll see.
Okay.
And what would you like to talk about today, Joshua Washi?
Well, it goes along with one of your points about Sun Tzu. And it also relates to, what at the church we go to, what we talked about this past Sunday. During the month of October, we usually talk about, finance, our like a biblical view of finances,
Right.
that kind of stuff. And
I like your version of that. Don't waste your money on stupid stuff. Thank you very much. Let's move on.
right. Well, yeah, because it's funny because in the small groups at our church, we're compelled to kind of stop what we're doing, and for the month of October,
We are compelled.
everybody does the same
That's right.
thing, which is a little bit awkward, especially in groups like ours, because we have a lot of members in our group, or at least a few members in our group, who are leaders of another group
That's
on a
right.
different day, and so they teach it, and then they come to our group, and then they're in it, and so it's a little bit awkward. Not to mention that we're constantly doing different Bible study series. Right
Yeah.
now, we're doing an entire series, not just on our church's statement of faith, but like the history and genealogy of that statement of faith, tracing all the way back to like first century, the start of the church, the Nicene Creed, the Chalcedonian Creed, all that stuff, to the schism of like 1054 and the Protestant Reformation, and tracing our roots. Like when we're on our website looking at our statement of faith, what does it mean scripturally, but also historically? How did we get from first century apostles to our church's statement of faith today?
Right.
Tracing that sort of lineage.
By the way,
been-
it's awesome. It's a great lesson.
it's
Josh.
been really fun for me
It-
because
it-
I love this kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah, it's everybody is engaged in it. It's really good.
And because I love digging into the history, I love tying in like archaeology with history and like Bible places, and this is exactly all three of those.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so it's
that's
been
great.
really, really fun, and we're right smack dab in the middle of it. And it's always I always hate sort of like screeching to a halt,
Right.
and going a separate way. So what I try to do is incorporate that into what we're doing, and so this time around is no different. Well, so the statement is often made like, if your heart is in the right place, your giving and your all that stuff will follow along with it, which is true, and it's a very New Testament-ish way of looking at it. But it goes far deeper than that because it can be used as a litmus test, and I'm not just talking about money, because that's what everyone loves to focus on. Like, where's your money going? What are you doing with your money? Are you tithing? We associate percentages with it from one verse or another that we tend to extract for purposes of talking about money, and then but God is only interested in our finances in so much as it's a reflection of where our heart is. But that's there's a lot of people who give faithfully to the church as a means of, well, I've done my part, I'm good, see ya. And it's more of a means of like, okay, get this thing off of my back so I can go and do whatever I want. And that's not it's not like there's an accountant somewhere saying, okay, you've checked off this box, you've submitted the correct percentage of your gross income, you are now deemed spiritually adequate for the next task. There's nothing like that in Scripture. God's interested in us. Everything else is secondary and tertiary. It's an indication of where our heart is and what our heart belongs to. And there's in the Old Testament, there's a really good litmus test about this that was really given indirectly to Israel. It was right at the end of the time of the Judges. Samuel, who was the last judge of Israel, his two sons were not looked at favorably by the rest of the nation, and they were not interested in Samuel's sons, any of them becoming their judge. And Israel was always looking at the pagan nations around them and were always trying to follow after their footsteps and do the same thing that they were doing, keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with the Amorites. And one of the things they saw in the nations around them is everybody has a king, and Israel didn't. And in fact, what's interesting? So side quest here. in the 1800s, there's an archaeologist named Flinders Petrie who found one of the most amazing had one of the most amazing archaeological finds of all times. It was called a stele, which is a big stone thing with a bunch of writing on it, and it's called the Merneptah stele, and I think it's in the museum in Cairo, but it was done during the time of the Egyptian pharaoh Merneptah, and there's all these inscriptions on it about the land, the nations that Egypt was interacting with at the time, and it would mention like Ascalon, and the symbol that was used for it. Next to it, it would have a symbol that meant this was a people group that had a king over it, and it would mention another one, and it'd have the symbol that this is the people group with a king over it. and it mentioned the name of Israel, one of the oldest instances where the name Israel actually shows up. But the symbol next to it wasn't associated with that, has a king over it. It was just, this is a people group without no king. And they dated it to the date that this stele was chiseled out or whatever, was exactly the time in the book of Judges when it says over and over that in these days Israel had no king. It was just a people group. They were led by judges, but they had no king over them. And so I think that's interesting how even outside of Scripture we see these other archaeological things that not only mentioned Israel, but mentioned that this was a people group in the land of Canaan that had no king over it. And so anyway, they wanted a king, and it was always God's plan for them to have a king at some point, but they kept wanting to jump the gun. They wanted a king like the nations around him. And so we get to Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 8, and they reject Samuel, and they say, we want a king like the nations around us, and it troubled Samuel. And as Samuel is talking to God, he says this, well, the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they've rejected me, that I should not reign over them. And so, he's reminding Samuel, like, this isn't a rejection of you, it's a rejection that I'm the one leading Israel. They don't want me. They want, they're always trying to go after the gods of the people of Canaan. And that's still what they're doing here. And so he told Samuel, he said, this will be the manner of the king. In other words, he went to Samuel and says, okay, go back to the people of Israel and tell them this. He said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. And he'll appoint him captains over thousands, captains over 50s, will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war, and instruments of his chariots. He'll take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. He'll take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. He'll take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. He'll take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses and put them to his work. He'll take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. So he's telling them this king, it's not going to be all fun and games. He's going to take a lot of your stuff, not just your stuff, but he's going to insert himself into your families. He's going to insert himself into your career, into your lives, all that stuff. And it says you'll cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, nay, but we will have a king a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Prior to this, who was the one judging Israel and going out before them and fighting all their battles? God was. They didn't want that. They wanted a fallible human king like the nations around them. And so in God's description of what this king would do, he's indirectly given us a litmus test to evaluate our own lives. Because how many times do we either encounter or hear about families, even in churches, who like their kids are involved in sports, and so they're traveling on the weekends to go to sports events instead of going to church, or they're investing in something, and so that affects what they give to their church, or they're always busy with their career or whatever, and so they're not involved in ministry, or things like that. It's like you can see that not just church, but just their interaction with God is limited because it takes second place or third place to all the other stuff. Like I have to work all the time. I have to pay my bills. I have to, my kids are involved in all kinds of extracurricular events that could take up a bunch of time. We're obsessed with some sports team that we always have to watch their games instead of doing that. I have a lawn and I have to make sure it's kept real nice, and so I don't do that kind of stuff. So all of these things, it's an indication of where your heart truly is. The people of Israel, their heart wasn't with God. Their heart was with all of these other things, and it showed up in every other aspect of their lives. And God even warned them. He's like, it's going to continue to show up because the king that you choose, he's going to demand all these things of you. But we see that they willingly gave those up because even though with that warning, their heart wasn't with God to begin with. And that's, for us, I think it's a litmus test. Like, look at your life and see what your life is devoted to. Not just your money. That's just a small thing. What's your time? What's your priorities? All this stuff. Are they God-focused or not? And if they're not, I think that's an indication of where your heart truly is.
That's why I stopped racing bikes, because it was everything to me. It was everything. Everything I ate, everything I did, everything I trained, and I continued to race about a year after God said, "It's time, Destry. You gotta stop." It overtook my entire life, and I allowed it to happen. I thank God that I rededicated and started. I'll say this to people that are listening or watching. He changes your desires. He changed my desire. I didn't want to race anymore. I wanted to start getting more involved in ministry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was my whole thing. So it's not like you're going to feel like you're giving stuff up. If you allow God to change your desires and change your hearts, you're going to want to do those things. So anyway, that's my testimony. So we're going to close out here. Josh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the lesson. And Chris, thanks for being here. Hey, let's take a vote. Do we want to have Chris on camera? I'm
Chris votes no. Chris votes no.
I'm kidding.
Put your vote in the comments.
That's right. I'm kidding. Anyway, Donna, I love you. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for watching. We appreciate y'all, and we'll be back next week. See ya.